The Calibur arc in Sword Art Online has always been considered one of the worst arcs in the series. When you ask someone what their favorite arc is, they'll usually say either the Fairy Dance arc or the Calibur arc, and sometimes they might even say the first half of Alicization. Now, unlike the Fairy Dance arc, which is hated mainly just for the fact of us being introduced to the worst villain in the entire show, fight scenes that kinda just go nowhere, and a weird incest plotline, where in comparison, the Calibur arc is mainly disliked just for the fact that it's complete filler with really low stakes. The Calibur arc has some of the lowest rated episodes across Sword Art Online, according to the IMBD ratings. So I decided to give the Calibur arc a rewatch to see if the hate for this arc was actually deserved or not. The story starts off with Kirito and Sugu at the dinner table. They discuss about the holy sword Excalibur that has just been found in ALO, and how they want to go on a quest to be the ones to retrieve it. So they hop into ALO and meet up with the rest of their friends. Now this is one thing this arc does way better than any other, which is including the full cast of the show in the plotline. In the Aincrad arc, it was pretty much just Kirito and Asuna. In the Fairy Dance arc, it was just Sugu and Kirito. And in the Phantom Bullet arc, it was just Sinon and Kirito, which occasionally we would have other characters make small appearances in the arcs, but for the most part, they were kinda just pushed to the side. Now, to retrieve the Excalibur sword, they have to make their way down to Jotunheim, which is a hidden underground world beneath ALO, which they take a quick 5-minute walk down into Jotunheim, which is a shortcut because otherwise it takes like 2 hours to get there. Which once they get to Jotunheim, they catch a quick cab ride on Sugu's flying jellyfint called Tonki, which she had previously met the day before, which this kinda reminds me of Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now they are traveling to a pyramid which is hanging upside down beneath the World Tree, which is where they can begin the quest to retrieve Excalibur. But there is also some type of kill quest that has been going on in Jotunheim, where if players kill all the kinfolk off that live in Jotunheim, then they can earn the Excalibur sword that way as well. Now as they are traveling to retrieve Excalibur, they are greeted by a mysterious looking entity who goes by the name Urt, who is also known as Queen of the Lake. Long story short, Jotunheim has been taken over by the Frost Giants, and their leader who goes by the name Thrimmer. Thrimmer and the Frost Giants come from a world beneath called Niflheim. Jotunheim and Niflheim used to have a peace treaty, but one day Thrimmer's just like, yeah, no, I actually want more power. Thrimmer casted the Excalibur sword into the Well of Urt, which is the heart of their land, turning their once green and luscious land to ice and snow. It destroyed the roots of the World Tree, and Jotunheim lost the blessings from Yggdrasil, which is more commonly referred to as the World Tree. The World Tree roots grew up out of Jotunheim, and the only thing left is the pyramid with the Excalibur left at the bottom, which once Thrimmer and the Ice Giant took control of Jotunheim, they built Thrymheim, which is the biggest castle that sits on top of the massive ice once known as the Well of Urt. So basically, Kirito and the gang gotta stop Thrimmer and the Ice Giants, so Thrymheim, that castle, won't rise to Elfheim Online and destroy everything. The goal of Thrimmer is to move up and destroy Arun, which is the capital city of Elfheim Online, where he wants to turn everything into ice and take control, and his end goal being to take the golden apple that is growing at the top of the World Tree. Now I know I said long story short, but there's just so much little detail that goes into this arc. One of my favorite things about this arc is that it's actually structured like a real video game quest. Rumor of a hidden quest, optional high-level dungeon unlock, multi-floor raid area, boss encounters with mechanics, final boss with a time limit, legendary loot reward. That's basically a textbook MMO raid quest, and a lot of people agree that this is what the Aincrad arc should have been like, which I also completely agree with. Even though the Aincrad arc follows it to a certain extent, stint, the Caliber arc was just able to structure everything a lot better. Another thing that really stands out about the Caliber arc is its foundation in Norse mythology, a collection of myths, gods, and legends from the ancient Norse and Germanic peoples of Scandinavia. The quest draws on elements like Jotunheim, the giants, and the conflict between gods and chaos. While this mythology was designed by the developers of Elfheim Online, it's the cardinal system that enforces the rules of the quest, which, like fate in Norse myth, Cardinal doesn't care who the players are. It simply ensures that the events unfold according to the system's laws. This makes Norse mythology a perfect fit for the Cardinal system, because both are built around the idea of structured fate and freedom of action within an unavoidable set of rules. Now back to the story. Thrymer has manipulated the fairies of ALO into believing in this kill quest to help them take over Jotunheim faster, so that they can move their way up to Arun. So basically, Kirito and the gang gotta go through Thrymheim to get the Excalibur, and once the sword is retrieved, the blessings of Yggdrasil will return to the land of Jotunheim. Thrymer and the Ice Giants will be defeated, and the castle will vanish. And since Thrymer has sent a bunch of giants to attack the kinfolk, that means the castle is vulnerable right now, and they must attack while they can. And Urt gives them a little amulet and says that if the stone turns black, then all her kinfolk have been slain, and her remaining powers will have left her, which they accept the quest and head towards Thrymheim. The gang learns that there's a stripped down version of the Cardinal system that runs all the other VR MMOs, but this version that runs ALO is the full spec version, which is the same type that ran SAO, which means that the quest they were given to retrieve Excalibur was generated based on Norse mythology, and will end the same way the myth did, with destruction if they don't do something to stop it. And even though ALO is in danger of being destroyed by Thrymer, the Cardinal system has no other choice but to enforce it. They are worried because if they can't retrieve Excalibur, then ALO will be destroyed along with New Aincrad, which Elizabeth is scared that her blacksmith shop might be destroyed, and Klein is also scared. He says, "There goes finding my soulmate." Like, bro, you can just go meet a chick in the real world. Like, what do you mean? So the only way to stop it is for Kirito and everyone to complete the quest. Now, it would have been cool to see these bosses in ALO, because the fight scenes throughout this small arc are actually really cool, and the teamwork between players is just the cherry on top. The only problem is just the overall lack of suspense, because in the Aincrad arc, if you die in the game, you die in real life. And in the Phantom Bullet arc, if you get killed in the game, then Deathgun's partner would be waiting back at your apartment, getting ready to take you out. And even though Fairy Dance didn't have a die in the game, die in real life concept, there still felt like a good amount of suspense because Kirito had to get Asuna back. The Caliber arc has the lowest ratings of the entire show, and I can definitely somewhat understand that, but at the same time, I think that the Fairy Dance arc was technically worse. We barely get any fights in the Fairy Dance arc, and it just felt really dragged out, and eventually led us to the worst antagonist of all time. Now, it would have been cool to see some of these bosses in the Fairy Dance arc. I know they're going to be a bit different because it's not based on Norse mythology, but still, I think it would have been great. The only real suspense from the arc comes from the time crunch that they are on, so they can save Arun and restore peace to the land, which I guess was a decent plot. People always considered SAO to be the best game, but personally, I think ALO is the best. Now yes, obviously, Kirito doesn't look as cool as he does in SAO as the Black Swordsman, but I think the magic aspect of ALO is what makes it better. Things like having unique sword spells for the characters, and even Pina has her own bubble breath spell. And this was the first time in the series that it felt like every character actually had a purpose and had to work together. We see this later on in the War of the Underworlds arc, but I honestly feel like it's even better here. Now there's 4 floors in total, and they gotta get to the final floor, all the way at the bottom to retrieve Excalibur, which in my opinion, I think they should have had the group split up, where half of the group is fighting the Ice Giants along with Urt, and then Kirito Kirito and a couple others are trying to defeat the boss. I think this could have made it a bit more exciting, and this is one of the main problems with a lot of arcs in the show, is just the fact that it gets really repetitive when the show basically only focuses on Kirito, and there are no other characters with their own original storylines or quests. Like, I still enjoyed the fights a lot, and I'm happy that all the characters are included in this arc, but I think it could have added more tension to each scene if we're constantly switching back and forth in between scenes, going from group to group. Plus, it's like the kinfolk are still getting slain by the ice giants. Like, don't they matter at all to the group? But maybe I'm wrong. Later, when Kirito and the gang are making their way to the 3rd floor, they run into an NPC who goes by the name Lady Freya, which everyone thinks it's a trap, but Klein is just like, nah, I can't leave her. This could potentially be my future wife. And he even admits that he thinks it's a trap as well, and still decides to help her escape. Like, bro literally said, even if it makes them fail the quest, which will basically destroy all of ALO and kill Urt and the kinfolk, Klein's just like, I gotta do this anyways because I'm a good person. Like, bro, what? Klein is one of those characters that should have been written out a lot better in my opinion. Bro is just the biggest gooner of all time, but I still love Klein. The chick's just like, yeah, I need to retrieve my people's treasure that Thrimmer stole, and Klein's just like, alright, bet, like, you can come with us. Which, this is honestly the dumbest written part of the arc. They literally all just admitted that it's probably a trap and still decided to help her anyways, which they got lucky, and it turns out that she wasn't evil, but still, they are on a huge time crunch, and the stakes are very high for the characters. And it's like, bro, what? Like, you all just admitted that it's probably a trap, but yet you are still willing to go along with it. I'm assuming it's part of the Norse mythology, so her character had to be in the show, but still, she could have been introduced in a better way, or just give Kirito and Klein's character a bit better writing there. Now, they make their way to the final floor to fight the boss, which the overall pacing for these episodes really aren't that bad. Like, they could have dragged this arc out for a lot longer like they did the fairy dance arc, so it doesn't really bother me having a small filler arc like this in the season. Now, the mage that they rescued ended up boosting everyone's maximum HP, which it turns out that she is actually on their side, which I guess was kind of a plot twist for a lot of us, because I'm assuming most of us hadn't heard of the Norse mythology quest before, so we kinda came into thinking that Freya was most likely gonna end up betraying the group, which I guess ends up being a good decision. Now, when we finally meet Thrimmer, this is where they should have added some type of plot twist, where it turns out that they are actually on the wrong floor, or maybe not the wrong floor, but the wrong side of the dungeon. And in this dungeon, it could have been like a trap room, similar to the one in Aincrad, Season 1, Episode 3, and then afterwards, they would have to find the actual boss room before time runs out. I think something like that could have spiced up this episode a bit more, while still being able to stick to the original quest. I think this arc was just lacking the element of surprise, and things were a bit too predictable. Now, everyone makes it to the boss room where they confront Thrimmer, and we find out that the reason why Thrimmer had Freya imprisoned was because they were supposed to get married, but he caught her snooping around the treasure, is what he says. Which, I gotta say, I liked Thrimmer at first, up until he implied that he's going to SA Freya after he is done with taking everyone out, which I don't even want to go into this. Just when I thought that we finally had a normal villain, he just had to go and say that and just ruin it. Now, during the final boss fight, Freya's just like, yeah, so there's no way we can actually win this, but it actually turns out that there's a golden hammer that belongs to my people that is somewhere hidden in this room, which Kirito uses a lightning sword skill to be able to find the hammer, which once again, I think these sword skills and the magic involved in ALO, but more specifically in this arc, is so cool. And there are lots of cool uses for these sword skills, and it just would have been nice to have these in the fairy dance arc. But yeah, Kirito finds the hammer and tosses it to Freya for some reason, and Kirito's just like, oh damn, I should not have done that. And yeah, Klein's future wife turns into a man, which Klein's like, yeah, sorry honey, I think I'm gonna have to actually cancel the wedding. But it turns out that Freya is actually Thor, the god of thunder, or at least when holding the hammer she is. But Klein's like, yeah, I changed my mind, I still love you even though you are a dude. And yeah, they all attack together and beat Thrimmer, and to be honest, I thought the fight was alright. I think the Death Gun fight was a lot cooler. Even the fight against Sugo was better in my opinion, but maybe that's just because of how much I hate Sugo. And now Thor is just like, thank you, because of you my treasure has been returned and my disgrace avenged. He gives them the lightning hammer and is just like, alright, peace out. Which yeah, I guess it turns out that Freya was actually Thor. I don't really know how these folk tales go and the overall story behind it all. When I watched this arc for the first time, I was pretty confused, and even now I still have a lot of questions about the arc. Now the characters make their way down the stairs because apparently the elevator was out of order, which when Kirito pulls out the sword, it destroys Thrymheim, but luckily Tonki comes and saves them. Kirito throws the sword away because it's too powerful and game-breaking, and then Sinon retrieves the sword and gives it back to him like a present, which Kirito accepts it as a present, and Sinon says that every time he draws it, she has to think about him. Like, bro, I'm sorry, but what is this writing here? Kirito literally has a girlfriend, and then all the other girls are also upset at Sinon, including Lifa. Like, there are certain things about this arc that just really don't make any sense, and are pretty uncomfortable to watch. It's crazy just how big of an improvement Alicization is compared to this. But yeah, the World Tree and its blessings return back to Jotunheim, and they complete the quest. Now just to recap some things that could have made this arc better. 1. If they added trap rooms into the arc, it felt like everything was a little too straightforward, but this way they could have spiced things up a little bit while keeping the Norse mythology folktale true to its roots. 2. If they split up the storyline, having a couple characters go and stop the giants from attacking the kinfolk, this would have made it a bit more entertaining in my opinion. 3. Use more sword skills. Like, it would have been cool if they had to use a certain sword skill to get through each part of the castle. I think that could have added like a cool learning curve to the arc. But yeah, I still enjoyed the arc a lot. I love that the characters were all able to work together, and it shows just how much Kirito has grown throughout the series, and that he is no longer just a solo player, but someone who works well with others. Anyways, that was the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, that's all I got. Peace.